lot of implication for both teams and players picking in that middle portion of the draft. Find out why there's so much upside and so much value to be had in year one with some of the changes coming up in this new CBA, coming up on Locked On NBA Big Board.
You are Locked On NBA Big Board, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Big shout out to everybody that makes Locked On NBA Big Board your first listen of the day. We know you have a lot of different options, and this is being posted mid-afternoon, but really appreciate it. We are free and available everywhere. We will never be, right now, as of now at least, we will never be behind a paywall, and we really appreciate everybody who listens. So thank you so much. Really means a lot to us, especially as we are in this final, just stretch of the season, draft season. There's exactly 1 week until the NBA draft. I'm very excited. I may be going to the draft, still on the fence, but hopefully Rafael and I will both be there. It'd be really great. But today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So this episode, I want to just quickly talk about some of the guys. I'm enamored personally with the guys in the 12 to 26 range, roughly. If you look at any mock draft, you're going to see a lot of the same players over there. And I want to go down just why it impacts some of these teams that are picking in that range, why there's good value to be had in both trades and just if you're trying to fill out the rest of your roster, given the new CBA has a lot of emphasis on cheaper players. You can't really fill out the same way you could at an end of bench. The super teams of past, they did really try and outlaw that. And the counter for teams is, okay, we'll build through the draft. Good teams have to get better, and that's going to be huge. So I think that 12 to 25 range, that's about what I have, almost 12 to 30, really. You could say the back end of the lottery to the end of the first round is just ridiculously strong. There's going to be multiple guys who hit both in past 15, but really just even in the 20s and even in the 30s, because I'm going off my big board, which I actually just released today on mavsdraft.com, and I think there's just so much talent there that it's really hard not to fall in love with that range. So let's just talk about some of the big overarching picture of that range before, just to paint some context, right? These are the teams that are picking in this range. You're going to hear a lot of names that you're going to go, I feel like they're better than the whatever pick they're picking, right? Let's just start with Atlanta at 15. They're picking 15th. They have a lot more talent on their team than just about any other 500 team in the history of the NBA. It feels like they are one of the more talented 500 teams ever. You have Minnesota's pick who goes to Utah. So Utah really could package 16, 9, 28. They're also in this range twice. They have Philadelphia's pick. Charlotte has a pick at the end of the first round where they also may want to move up because they have a good amount of seconds as well. You have Indiana has the 26th, 29th, and 32nd pick. So they have a plethora of picks really in this range. And they also have the 55th pick and the 7th pick. So there's a lot going on there. They're definitely a trade target. I've heard that there are teams that are in the very back end of the second round, or even teams that don't have a pick right now that want one of those picks because Indiana just has too much. They don't have the roster space to really support 5 draft picks. And because of that, something's got to go, whether it's they consolidate and hand it off to someone else, whether it is outright selling. I do think those are possibilities. So you also look at Portland has the 23rd pick, given that they also have the 3rd pick. I think there's a lot more upside there too for them. Brooklyn owns the 22nd and the 21st pick. They have Phoenix's pick. But you look at really that 15 to 19. So you got Atlanta, Utah, the Lakers, the Heat, who just lost in the finals, the Golden State Warriors, and then the Houston Rockets, who have their second pick of the first round. So there's a lot of different avenues this can go. And what I like about the 12 to 28 is the exact number on my board that I have this one tier of guys is every single one of them poses either high floor or high upside. And really, most of them have a good blend. So let's talk about some of the players that I think would be just good fits. I think Atlanta's a pretty measurable team here because so many other teams have their core in place. Their playoff teams, they're trying to make the playoffs and get, to the next round that they didn't make. Atlanta, they made the first round. They want to at minimum be in the second round again. And let's be real, they're trying to get to the finals. Trae Young tweeted out, we're next, all that stuff. But even beyond that, the core already made the conference final 2 years ago. They want to be back. So with that, I think it's a good starting point. They have a lot of similarities to some of these other teams, but it gets tricky, right? You have Kobe Buffkin is my 12th rated player. I think he's somebody who he could have been in the tier above, which is generally the consensus top 10 guys plus one. And you can really just top 11. I have mostly that. I will say Cason Wallace is my 8th ranked player, but on mocks, he's falling in this range too, which bolsters that depth even more. But you look at Kobe Buffkin. I think he translates to every single playoff team. He plays defense. He's still 19 years old. He's a young sophomore. He can play offense, obviously being just a lights out shooter, very skilled, high motor. Just his only flaw you could even point to is he was a young point guard, but this is the first year he played point guard and he didn't look great at it, which fine. But he's an inexperienced young point guard. He can grow. And I think things like that matter across teams. So I don't think he's going to be in that 20s range. I think he's gone by 15. I'd be shocked if he's anything further than the second pick out of the lottery, honestly, maybe. So I guess that really puts him at Utah. And Utah's a prime candidate because we don't know what they're doing in 9. They could take Jarris Walker. They still need a point guard. I think he's a prime candidate. But some other guys in this range, and we'll go over this as well throughout the episode, but there's just some other guys in this range I really like Jett Howard may even, I'd heard of the combine. He was falling towards the 20s and even 30. He's in this range. Leonard Miller's there. I don't understand how he's still being mocked to 26. And generally, ESPN's mock has been pretty accurate about where guys go. I want to emphasize one thing, though, just a break out of this. Most ESPN has the best mock, like most accurate. They're generally them in The Athletic. The problem is most mocks are inaccurate. So you're still getting mock drafts that have guys getting 50% success. That's a win, right? And it's not a knock on ESPN or Gavoni, any of those guys, or Sam Vecini. They're great at what they do. It's just kind of tempering expectations. It's the same way the consensus generally doesn't hit on big board rankings. Like, it's just not that successful. Like, you have to realize with the draft, the context of it is on mock drafts, if you can hit 50%, it's good. In a lot of other contexts, 50% is really bad. But so just kind of breaking from that, there are a lot of other upside plays, just kind of breaking it down more specifically. I apologize. I've been building it up and not getting there, but the upside plays in this range, you've got Dariq Whitehead, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Sidi Sissoko, Bilal Coulibaly. I do think he might, I put him in this because I do have him in this ranking range. I have him number 20 on my board just because the shot does worry me, but he is somebody who could go number 12. There's been a lot of rumors. Hey, Oklahoma City, they really like him. He's somebody. Max Lewis has high upside. Derek Lively's another guy. Keontae George, Nick Smith, Ryan Rupert, Brandon Podziemski. These are the guys in that range, and they all have high upside. And also Bryce Sensabaugh, who I almost forgot about. And then you look at the floor, right? You've got Chris Murray. You have Jett Howard. I think he's got the floor of a great shooter. You also have Noah Clowney. Could throw Derek Lively back in this conversation. Could also say Ryan Rupert. There's Kobe Buffkin, I think, is one of the higher floor guys really in this range. And then you have some blend, right? Just kind of the leftovers of it. You have Noah Clowney, Max Lewis, Jordan Hawkins, who is another guy who has some hidden upside. And really, you kind of give or take. Those are all the names that in there. Leonard Miller and Dariq Whitehead as well. But those are all the names in that list. I just went through, 17 names, 16 names. And you hear it, and this is a sweet spot of the draft. So I really like it. I think that's somewhere that teams should want to get trading into, like just from speaking from a Mavs draft. I want the Mavs to trade into this range. I want them to get to 15. Like, I think the options there are so much better. I'd rather get an asset, getting the guy I want, than just straight outright reaching at 10. So that's big for me. I think that's kind of the range I would want to be in. But I want to also talk about just some of these guys a little bit more in depth, what makes them more upside plays, where their best fits are, things like that. But first, let me tell you about GameTime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. So some things I like about GameTime app, flash deals and last-minute tickets. They're easy to find and buy tickets. They have 3D views of the seats. There's a lot of that. So forget planning months in advance. GameTime has deals right now, right up to the game and the day of the event. You get exclusive flash deals on any sport, pretty much, for tickets. And the GameTime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA, one word, for $20 off your first purchases. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, one word, for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So welcome back to Locked On NBA Big Board. Again, my name is Richard Stayman. You might know me better on Twitter as @MavsDraft. These guys in the 12 to 28 range, but really like kind of in the draft range of end of the lottery, end of the first round. It's a sweet spot right now. I think there's some guys that are going to go higher and lower. And just because the talent's too good, just because you're a 26 pick doesn't mean you've disappointed or anything. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to find themselves being picked 30 and find very healthy careers in the 30s, I should say. Not many guys can be picked at one slot, but that is something that I find really intriguing. I think it's simple. I think if you're a team, let's just break it down by team. If I was every team, and I'm going to read the first 14 picks just very quickly. I'm just going to use tankathons with like a couple changes, or actually I'll do ESPN's because like I said, I trust theirs a lot. So number one, you have Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Asar Thompson, Jarris Walker, Anthony Black, Taylor Hendricks, Derek Lively. Let's just say he's there. He's at 10. Grady Dick, Kobe Buffkin, and that's 12. Jalen Hood-Schifino, Bilal Coulibaly. So that's it. So I'm going to take all those players out, and let's mock from here. 15, I think the Hawks should absolutely take Cason Wallace. I don't think twice about this. I think he fills a lot of defense. He has a lot of upside. You never know with these Kentucky guards. I think one thing with him is the pick and roll ability offensively was rough because he didn't have a floor spacer as a big, and he didn't have many shooters next to him. So to me, that matters a lot when looking at context. And also, like, if you're trying to predict where the breakout is for a Kentucky guard, it's right there. So I really like that element about him. I think that's important. I would also say that just putting him next to Trae Young, he can play off ball. Like that's a big deal. So I like him a lot. So the next player available on my board is Jordan Hawkins. I don't know, honestly, how he slipped out of this. He went 16 on ESPN's mock. And actually they have Cason at 15 as well. I didn't even look at that while I was doing it. But with Hawkins, you get a premier shooter. And say with this, you got Taylor Hendricks. I mean, that's a slam dunk of a draft. You got the shooting you want next to just, honestly, with a bunch of creators, a bunch of guys that don't have like one single role as a true creator, having their abilities to be we can all do a little bit of everything, but we all have premier shooting. You also have Ochai Agbaji, for example, who was one of the best shooters in last year's draft. There's a lot to like in that. So I would love to see him there. Let's go down to 17. ESPN has Nick Smith. Man, you could go 20 different directions here. I will play this one safe. Let's go with a clutch guy. I think that's what they're going to ultimately do, and that's why they chose Nick Smith. Let's go Noah Clowney. Let's get them some interior presence. I think he is somebody that you look at what LA needs. Anthony Davis isn't healthy all the time. The interior defense is a huge part of what won them a championship in 2020. I think Noah Clowney has a lot of room to grow while already being very good and around the rim defensively. He's a good rebounder, but as he fills out his frame, you've got yourself the Anthony Davis replacement. Maybe not at the level, of course, that Anthony Davis is, but just maybe let's look at the one area of defense. It's not a significant drop-off when, assuming the prime, not currently. But say that Noah Clowney does hit his ceiling. I think there's a healthy enough drop-off that you can live with. So I really like that. At 18, the Heat on ESPN, they have Ryan Rupert. I would go a different direction. If you're trying to get somebody to play winning basketball that has all the talent, like I think the best talent right here in terms of if every one of these players in this range hit their upside, I think it's Bryce Sensabaugh. Yeah, he has issues about playing team defense. He's very rough in that regard. He's an awful off-ball defender. Just there's no way to put it nicely. But at the same time, he's actually a very good on-ball defender in terms of just physicals. He can move quickly. He can hang with guys. He's strong. So there is that. And I can only imagine what he'd do when he's even stronger in the Miami program. But if they get him right and kind of get his head on straight about decision-making and really learning how to play within a team more than just be himself and be his talent, I think there's a lot of upside there. So that's somebody who I would take at 18. Again, they have Ryan Rupert. I have Bryce Sensabaugh at 19. The Golden State Warriors, ESPN has Jet Howard. Give me Chris Murray. I mean, I get why they're taking Jet Howard. and he's a much better shooter. But at the same time, I think I want the defensibility and take a little bit less off shooting. I think there's some element. Chris Murray didn't shoot the absolute best by any means from three this year. For the year, I'm pulling up his numbers now, but for the year, he shot 33.5% from three. Fine. Not what you'd want, but also it's a little bit different from what Keegan Murray had, who he's always going to be compared to. And that is, he had to be the man. There was really not much help around him. He didn't have a second NBA prospect like Keegan did. And Chris Murray was always being hounded off ball. I think with NBA spacing and him being more of a fourth or fifth option offensively, his game opens up a lot. Let's finish out the top 20 here, and then we'll get it on the other side. But the Houston Rockets, the ESPN has Noah Clowney. He's off the board for me. So let's go with, if I'm Houston, I mean, I want to say, keep going for upside swings because that is what they've been doing since 2021. But at the same time, you might have to calculate it a little bit. So that being said, if health is the upside concern or the really just the risk here to somebody hitting their upside, whereas like some of the guys they've taken, Josh Christopher, is the skill and the ability actually there? I would take Dariq Whitehead. I've been adamant. I have him 15th on my board. If he was healthy, he's top 10. I really like Whitehead. I think he's being overthought. He was a misfit at Duke. He didn't have a clear role. He didn't get the head start that he could have gotten by staying healthy. He had multiple foot injuries. The surgery has held him back even more in the offseason. I think it's a clear fit. So for me, that would be who I take. So let's round this back out. So at 15, I have Casey Wallace to the Hawks. 16, I kept Jordan Hawkins that matched ESPN. 17, I put Noah Clowney to the Lakers. 18, I put Bryce Sensabaugh to the Heat. 19, I gave the Warriors Chris Murray. And 20, I gave the Houston Rockets Dariq Whitehead. I do expect at least one of those teams to make a trade. Not sure if it's the Lakers, but they do need assets. They'd be an interesting one. But let's talk about some of these other teams finishing out the end of the first round. But a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Locked On NBA Big Board. Again, my name is Richard Stayman. You probably know me better a little bit on Twitter as @MavsDraft. So finishing out this mock draft, at 21 and 22, the Brooklyn Nets can go complete upside. ESPN has them taking Keontae George and James Najee. I would go similar direction. I think you can swing at Keontae George at 21. It's not my favorite. I have him 25th on my board, but it's enough of a quote-unquote reach that you can live with. I'd say you have to, at this point, take Keontae or Nick Smith, who are both available on my board at the moment. I would also say Leonard Miller has to be he cannot slide any further. And in hindsight, I almost wish I had taken him at Houston, but I kind of glossed over it. But at the same time, I do think if Dariq Whitehead and Leonard Miller hit their upside, Dariq's got the higher upside. So that's ultimately what tore it for me. But Leonard Miller should be much higher. He's 16th on my board. That they're literally one spot apart. And it's because of that high upside. And for me, it's Leonard Miller. I mean, 6'10". I mean, he has the Kawhi measurements, or the Masai, which I guess it counts for both, but where it's 6'10", 7'2" wingspan, massive hands. He's got the ball skills. He's really developing still. He's still raw, but he did take a jump, which he really wanted to see in the G League Ignite. Played incredible competition. He looked poised, but he looked very comfortable, right? And yeah, the jump shot's a little bit far away. He needs to develop his handle, needs to refine some skills, but he has a good foundation for a solid mismatch forward who can handle the ball at 6'10". So Brooklyn could absolutely develop him. You never know what they're doing next. I think it's a good upside play for their next phase, if you will. So I like that. Keontae George and Leonard Miller to the Nets. At Portland, they actually have Jaime Jaquez. He's not in my range on this. And neither is James Najee. James Najee is actually the very first person out of this tier for me. But with Portland, let's say they take Brandon Miller. I think I want to say you have to take a big, but there's really no bigs to take here. So because of that, this is tough. I'm going to say Ryan Repair. Ryan Repair would be my pick. They had him going 18. He's somebody who I don't think anybody has a real grasp on in this draft. But you look at his defense, right? His defense is outstanding. 6'6", 7'2" wingspan. Needs to get a little bit better at defending without fouling. But I think ultimately he could be somebody who, for Portland, he could become a Jeremy Grant replacement if they decide to move off of him. Really like his defense. I think at a minimum he can do that. And he also grew up as a point guard, so there are ball skills, and the jump shot needs development. But at a minimum, he can be a defensive specialist, which every team vying for the playoffs, they need that. So I would say Ryan Repair at 23. At 24 with Sacramento, they have Chris Murray. It's the most cliche. one, he's not going to make it that far. Two, it's too cliche. I would take Maxwell Lewis. If you're just looking for an offensive swing, it's him. I think he's got some defensive concerns to iron out, but I think the offensive talent and the upside offensively are very high. That he has a great crossover. He sees the floor well. The jump shot's so clean. He's a good rebounder. Also, he plays against like in the post very well. I really like that as well. But again, the defense, and he also needs to worry about, improving some turnovers, get stronger, and be a better decision maker. But again, pure upside play. So Sacramento, I would give them Max Lewis at 25. You got the Memphis Grizzlies. And again, I'm just using this pool of players. I want to say Brandon Podziemski, and that's who they have for Memphis as well. It feels very on brand, but Nick Smith should be, and I will say in real life, he's going to go a lot higher than he has in my mock. I'm just a little bit more sour. I have him at 26 on my board just because of decision making, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when the time comes for him to get picked. But let's go Brandon Podziemski. Didn't measure super well in the combine, but it doesn't matter. Forces turnovers. He had a same killer breakout season Jalen Williams had at Santa Clara the next year at the same school, Santa Clara. Monster offensively, just really has no holes in his game. Great passer, combo guard who does everything. And honestly, he's not even a combo guard. He's just a true shooting guard that has playmaking skills. So I really like him. He'd be a good Memphis player. Just replaces the same minutes Dylan Brooks has, or cuts into it at least, not necessarily one-for-one replacement. So I agree with them, Brandon Podziemski. The Pacers, now this is where it gets interesting. For here, I'm just going to draft for the spot because I do not see either of these picks being made, at least both of them. I think 29 is very likely to be sold outright, maybe like a second round pick in the future or something, like a high second for next year or something like that for a team that's projected to be bad. But I just don't think they're going to get a ton of value. And I believe this is the last year you can do buying with money to owner for picks. So I think the Pacers may take advantage of that. I've heard rumblings at the combine that there are teams that really want those picks. So for me at 26, I'm going to give them Nick Smith. I'm just going to take that there. With Nick Smith, the decision-making is an issue. The pick-and-roll ability is poor. He was in the 22nd percentile of pick-and-rolls. That means he was better than only 22% of college basketball players in the pick-and-roll in terms of efficiency this last season. I will cut him some slack. The context favors him, right? Bad spacing. He was injured. Team didn't really – I don't think they had great talent assembled there, but it wasn't really organized. And I think he might benefit a little bit more from being more off ball than on ball. So some of these weaknesses may not matter. I think he's more like a Gary Trent, Malik Beasley. He's somebody who just plays off ball and shoots the cover off the ball. So again, decision making, yeah, it's concerning, but you can live with it. So that's who I would take at 26. I'm not even going to say for the Pacers. I doubt they keep the pick. The Hornets, let's get them some shooting though, because even if they do take Brandon Miller, they still need more shooting. Jed Howard is my pick here. He slid, not happy about it. But here he is. I think he'd be my pick at the end at 27. And then 28, since this is the last one, I'll give you a couple bonus picks. At 28, this leaves only one person, and I got to figure out who I left. It's actually, and it's City Sissoko, who it's crazy. I really like City, but again, this is Utah. I don't know if they make this pick, but it'd be a really fun pick. They have Maxwell Lewis. City Sissoko is young. He played the entire season at 18 in the G League Ignite. The shot needs a little bit of work. I think he has inconsistent mechanics on his release. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. Basically, his follow through. Sometimes it'll be all five fingers. They do the dove, right? Or the swan, whatever you were told it was called. And sometimes, though, his pinky flares out. So you'll see it like this. And then sometimes his thumb will flare out. So you see like that. The follow through is just heavily inconsistent. So that worries me. But the motor, the work ethic, all that stuff, I have heard great things about how good the G League Ignite is for young players looking to become pros right away. So I really like that. Let's finish out this mock draft, though. I'm not just going to stop at 28. It's too arbitrary. 29, again, that's the Pacers. Not picking for them, though. That's very unlikely to be gone. If I had to guess who comes in here, I'll say the Phoenix Suns. I think they're going to make a very surprise move and get into 29. And if that's the case, give me Trace Jackson Davis. They need a big. Trace Jackson Davis was super skilled, one of the most productive players in all of college basketball. Always a 5x5 threat. I mean, he was a monster. He averaged 20 points a game, 21 actually, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, just under a steal game at 0.8, 3 blocks a game, and that was on 58% shooting, and his shooting upside is underrated. 70% from the line, shot at the combine, didn't look broken. I think there's a lot to like with him. He's a great pick at 29, and if the Phoenix Suns can come up and trade for him, I think that'd be great. The Clippers would be great too at 30 for Jordan Walsh. That's who I have. They have Tariq Whitehead. Again, these aren't guys. This is no longer an order. I do have Jordan Walsh 37th and Trace Jackson Davis 30th. So this is pretty good range. But with Jordan Walsh, you get this long player who can play defense. He can finish at the rim. He knows how to use his length already. Where he doesn't know how to use his length is his jump shot. I think that's something that'll come along. It's easy to teach guys to shoot. It's not easy to teach guys how to play hard and have the motor and have the intangibles of knowing what to do, things like that. And I think that's where Jordan Walsh wins himself over with a lot of these teams. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. He's ridiculously long and athletic. That combination is going to get him places, and he's going to win possessions that he shouldn't be because of that. So I think the Clippers, a team that needs somebody like him on the wings as an ultra utility man, and I think there's a lot of shooting upside there untapped. I think they're the team that would want to take the swing on him. But that wraps this up. It was kind of a joint mock draft, plus why the 12 to 28 range is so good. I hope those explanations in depth kind of made sense. I know I said I would do more team-based stuff, but I didn't. So forgive me for that. But we'll be back tomorrow. Again, we're free and available every single day on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, all of it. Rafael will be back. I'm filling in for him today, but we'll be back all of next week too. Might have some live coverage, bonus content next week from Rafael and I for both at Combine. Again, for me, it's still up in the air a little bit, but making a last minute decision on that. But thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day.